In the previous video, we have seen how to create a table view, and we have created this table view filled with strings from S0 to S11, and we stopped right there. Now what we want to do is I want to be able to click any cell of this table view and it should display more information or just pop up a new window. So if you try to click them right now, they are clickable, but they don't do anything. So we need to fix this. The first thing I want to do is I want to have another view that is going to be displayed when I click any one of those cells. So I will come to my library and choose View Controller, and I will drag a new view controller to my view right here. Now I will place everything in this view controller, but I need to be able to jump back to the original view controller, so I will just add a button. Let me just add it manually, drag it right here, put it somewhere in here, and I will call it back. So this is my back button. Now we know that this is controlled by the view controller.swift here. I need another class that's going to control the other view controller. So what I will do is I'll go to File, New, and then New File, click Next, and let me call it something like Second View Controller. Okay, and I will go next and create my second view controller. Now this is what's going to control the other part of my application. So what I will do is I will first go to my storyboard and I click this little square here, and I will come in the menu and see this custom class. I will search for my second view controller class to be the class that is going to control this view controller. Now having accomplished this, I will activate this button, so I will place it here as an action, and let me call the action go back. Okay, so what go back going to do is a simple thing. It is going to allow me to jump back to the previous view controller, and what I will do is I will just dismiss this view controller, and then it's going to allow me to jump back, and we'll see what I mean by dismissing this view controller when we connect them to each other. But for now, well, we'll write this line of code: presenting view controller dot dismiss, and animated is going to be true and completion is going to be nil. So this is what we need to write: presenting view controller dot dismiss, animated is true and completion is nil. Let's save this for now, and now I need to jump back to my storyboard and I need to connect those two together. I need a way to jump from this to this, and this is achieved by performing what we call a segue. Again, I'll come here to this little square holding control and pull it to the second view controller, and I will say show. Okay, now this is what we call a segue, so I will click on my segue and I will come here and I will give it an identifier. I need an identifier to refer to the segue back in my code. So let me call it SEG for segue. So my segue has an identifier. Now I need to jump when I click any cell of my table. Now remember, my table is controlled in my view controller, the original one. So I will come here in my view controller, and somewhere in my code I need to implement a method that says when did select row. So I will go function table view and see the first one, table view, UITableView did select row. So this is what we want to do. We want to do something when I select one of those rows. Now what I will need to write right here is I need to jump from one view controller to the other view controller. So I will type in perform segue with identifier. Now remember the identifier we had is SEG for our segue, and then for the sender it's going to be self. So let's save this and let's try to run our application. Now if I click on one of those cells, it's going to give me this page, and if I click back, it is going to take me back to that page. So far we are able to jump back and forth, but jumping back and forth like what we're doing right now is sort of useless. So what I want to do is I want to have something displayed on the second page to make it useful. So I'll come to my assets right here, and then let me go to my Finder, and in my downloads I will just get those 3 photos, add them in here to my assets. Okay, and let me go back to my view controller, and I will edit my array to have it display Apple, Microsoft, and Samsung, which are the 3 photos I have in there, and I don't need all of those things. Okay, now if I run this, it is going to display Apple, Microsoft, and Samsung, and you might have guessed right now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to display the image on the second view. So I'll come here, let me just pull this a little bit up because it was so low, and now let me search for image view, and my image view is going to lie in somewhere here in the middle of the screen. Okay, now I need to pass some data from this view controller to the second view controller. First of all, let me just go to the second view controller, which is the second class, the class that controls the second view controller. And I'm trying to find it right here. This is it, second view controller. Okay, so let me create a variable that is going to be called image source. Okay, my image source is going to basically tell me where do I get my image, and this is going to be set based on whatever I get from the previous class. Okay, so let me go right here to my view controller. So remember, the view controller is what controls the table view. Now what I did here is when I select, I'm just performing the segue, but I also need to know the index of the table that actually or the index of the item in the table, because I need to get the name of this. Okay, so you need either an index or you need to send the name directly. It's totally up to you. Let's just try to send the name, and by this to try to send the name, we'll need to implement the prepare segue method. So I will say func prepare for segue. Okay, and when this is what's going to be happening when I try to jump from one view controller to the other view controller. So I need a destination, so var dest is going to be segue dot destination as, and then exclamation mark. So our destination is basically the second view controller. So second view controller. So I'm jumping from this to this second view controller. Why did I do this line? This line is going to allow me to access any variable in that view controller. So as you can see, if I type dest dot, now I get the string image source. I can set it to whatever I want. Okay. Now what do I want is I want to do something. I want an index to allow me to get the names, because I named my images as the same names from the array. So let me create an index here. Okay. So somewhere in my class, let me say var index is equal to 0. Okay. And whenever I select any row or any cell from my table, I will set my index to the index of that array that I'm choosing. So I will say self dot index is equal to my index path dot which row I'm using. Okay, and then my image source right here is going to be ARR of my index. Okay, let me save this, and just to test out, just to make sure that we are getting this, let's go to the second view controller, and whenever we load right here, let me just do a simple print. Okay, so print, and then I will print image source. Nothing fancy for right now. It is just going to print. If I'm able to send that value, it is going to print it under here in the console. So I was able to print Apple. If I go back, I'm able to print Samsung. If I go back, I'm able to print Microsoft. So I'm able to pass values between the view controllers. Now it's just a matter of setting the image to this thing. So what I need to do is I need to go back to my storyboard and connect my image in here. So let me go back to my storyboard and open up another side of editor, and in here what I will do is I will choose my second view controller. I'll come right here, holding control to put my image as an outlet, and let me call it image display, and let me connect this. Now I don't need this part. What I need is whenever I load, instead of printing, I don't need to print right now. I just need to do the following: image display dot image is going to be equal to whatever I got from my image source right here, right? So this is going to be a UI image, and then we'll say named, and I need a string which is image source, and let me save this and try to run it. Now if I click on Apple, I get the Apple logo. If I click on Microsoft, it's Microsoft. If I click on Samsung, it is Samsung. And another thing that we can do is I can have some array here defined in my second view controller class that is going to have some kind of description, and then I will send the index as well. So I will not just send the image source, I will send some value here. Let me call this sending or received index. So a received index is going to be used for an array here. So I needed to define an array for description, and I can also include this as a label underneath that image view that I have. So to conclude, what we did here is we created another view controller, and we created another class to be linked to this view controller. We created a segue, and we have the identifier. So ignoring the identifier may give you an exception. So if you get an exception, the first thing you need to check is whether you have an identifier for your segue or not, and whether you type the right name for your identifier or not. Okay, that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.